Margret Howth, A Story of Today, was first published in 6 installments in the Atlantic Monthly beginning in October of 1861. It was author Rebecca Harding Davis's second widely acknowledged novel, and it shed a light on the suffering of poor American workers caught up in the Industrial Revolution. The story takes place in an Indiana wool mill during the fall and winter of 1860. There we find Margret Howth working alone at a dreary, depressing job at the Knowles and Company mill, where she sees the poor workers slave for countless hours in the heat and noise creating toxic dyes. She takes the job to help her ailing parents, who at one time had a comfortable life, but had now sold everything to buy food. The owner of the mill, Dr. Knowles, has planned to sell the mill to fund a commune for the underserved and downtrodden, and he hopes Margret will be a part of his plan. He was going to sell his share of the mill to a young upstart named Stephen Holmes. Margret was once engaged to Holmes, but the wedding was called off once Margret needed to care for her parents. Holmes was now engaged to another woman who he did not love, but he needed her father's dowry to realize his purchase of the mill. Holmes is still in love with Margret, but the past is too painful for both of them to revisit. Lois Yar was once an employee at the mill when she was a young girl, but she has brain damage and rickets and had to leave the mill, and she has a small job selling fruit from a cart. Her father Joe still works at the mill, but he gets involved with forgery and finds out that Holmes is going to fire him. Joe decides to set fire to the mill, but Lois, aware that Holmes is at the mill sleeping, runs into the building and saves him, although she later will die from the toxic smoke. Holmes survives the fire, but his dream of owning the mill is destroyed, and Dr. Knowles' utopian dream goes up in flames too, since the mill burned down before he could sign it over to Holmes. As Holmes recuperates, he sees how foolish he was to throw away love for money, and he is inspired by his newfound faith. He finds Margret to make amends, and she agrees to marry him. Margret's new role of wife fills her with happiness, and a surprise discovery of oil on their property means the end to the poverty in Margret's family. This novel touches on the role of women in society in the 19th century, the effects of the Industrial Revolution in America, and the poor working class who were ground up like dust while they labored for pocket change. Margret Howth was one of the first works of literature that fit into the realism movement. Unlike romantic fiction with strong heroes, princesses, and romantic plots, realism highlighted the plain, flawed, and unseen individuals of society. This novel is essential to answering the question of how works of literature reflect period and culture because it is spot on in its depiction of America's change from agriculture to industry in the mid to late 1800s. It would take over 100 years to find out about this great novel, as it remained relatively unknown before being rediscovered in the 1970s.